There are those special games, the ones you wait years for, the ones where from the first trailer you just know, okay, this could be it. A title that promises everything, that gets everything right, that has everything you'd want from a modern classic. And then, when the moment finally comes, the release, the hype, those first few minutes of gameplay, you slowly start to realize that something isn't quite right. Not right away, not with a big bang, but little by little. Gran Turismo 7 is exactly that kind of game. Built like a monument, sold like a dream, but in the end it's not what it pretends to be. Today we are talking about the grand return of a racing legend and why, just days after its launch, it turned into one of the biggest shitstorms in PlayStation history. Let's get into it. Gran Turismo, just the name alone. It's not just a racing game, it's an institution, a brand that for decades stood for extreme attention to detail, meticulous driving physics, and an almost reverent love of the automobile. From its beginnings on the original PlayStation with that incredible selection of real cars, to the jaw-dropping graphics of Part 4 on the PS2, all the way to the endless features of the newer titles. Gran Turismo has always been the gold standard of console racing simulators. But then came Gran Turismo Sport, a game that focused heavily on online competition and esports. For many longtime fans that was a radical break from the series' roots. Where was the extensive single-player career mode? Where was the endless car collection, the license grinding, the countless race series we remembered from earlier games? All of that was missing. GT Sport launched with great driving mechanics and impressive graphics, sure, but it felt incomplete. It lacked the soul of traditional single-player GT. It wasn't a Gran Turismo experience fans had grown to love. So when Gran Turismo 7 was announced, the hype was massive. The promise was clear. Finally a true GT again. No more purely online focus. Back to the roots, to solo campaign, to collecting and tuning cars like the classics. That's what fans were calling for. And Sony and Polyphony Digital seemed to have listened. We were promised the ultimate real driving simulator experience on PlayStation 5. The early reviews were glowing. A metascore of 87 out of 100, that's elite. Critics praised the stunning visuals, the immersive sound, the finely tuned driving mechanics, the sheer amount of content, and the trademark attention to detail from Polyphony. It seemed like the king of the racing games was finally back on the throne. But then something unexpected happened. Or rather, something was done that fundamentally changed the game. And that's the crucial point. Shortly after launch, after most reviews were already out and everyone was celebrating the game, a patch was released. A seemingly harmless update that, let's say, optimized the experience. And suddenly, the world, especially the player world, looked very different. Metaphorically speaking, the shiny race car now had a rust stain that couldn't be polished away. The user score on Metacritic? A disaster, 2.5 out of 10. That's not just mild dissatisfaction, that's an outcry. What happened? Was the game suddenly broken? Had it morphed overnight into something else entirely? No, it was just a developer's greed of money. Gran Turismo 7 introduced something you really don't want to see in a full-price game costing 70 or even 80 bucks. Extremely aggressive monetization through microtransactions. And all this after the initial reviews dropped, which praised the back then fair in-game economy. Suddenly, race rewards were drastically reduced, grinding for the dream car, the legendary classic, or latest supercar became a Sisyphean task. Either you repeated the same races for hours on end, or you pulled out your credit card. A car you could previously unlock with effort now cost $10 or up to $40 in real money. $40 for a single virtual car. The community was furious. People felt cheated. Critics had reviewed a game that economically still seemed fair. Players then got a game that systematically pushed them to buy content they should have been able to unlock just by playing. This was a textbook example of bait and switch. Polyphony Digital and Sony had a perfect launch moment with a great game, and knowingly or not, they ruined it by adjusting the in-game economy in a way that felt unfair just after the initial praise. That's a slap in the face to every player who paid full price for what was supposed to be a complete product. But it wasn't just the microtransactions. The game also had an always online requirement. No internet, no game. Even browsing your garage or playing the solo campaign needed an active connection. And if there was a problem with Sony servers, which wasn't rare, you were locked out, unable to even admire your cars in the menu. You were completely dependent on an external system, even for basic single-player tasks. That's not just annoying, it strips away your sense of ownership over the product you bought. On top of that, there were early issues with the AI. Sometimes it was completely passive, letting you pass without a fight. Other times it was overpowered, steamrolling you without a reason. It was frustrating, and often broke the otherwise precise driving feel. To be fair, Polyphony responded to some feedback and later allowed players to sell earned cars, something that wasn't possible before. That was a step in the right direction, but it doesn't change the fact that such a basic feature was missing at launch, and that the initial design of the game mechanics was clearly aimed at pushing you toward microtransactions. Gran Turismo 7 is a prime example of how a beloved franchise, which was met with almost universally positive reviews at launch and has a massive fanbase, can end up alienating its own community through questionable decisions by the developers or publisher. It's a game that under the hood is a brilliant racing simulator with gorgeous visuals, detailed car models and amazing driving mechanics. But this brilliant simulation is heavily compromised by a destructive economy system and unnecessary online requirements. It shows us that popularity and early hype don't always equal a truly good player-friendly product. Sometimes you need to look closer, pay attention to the details and most importantly, listen to the community, because they often know best what makes a great game. The case of Gran Turismo 7 is a warning. Even well-established studios can get lost in monetization models and lose the trust of their most loyal fans in the process. And that's a loss no patch can easily fix. I'm curious to see how the gaming industry will evolve in the future, hopefully not into an extreme money-grabbing model. That's it from me, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to my channel, or I will drive by and you will die when you eye my Volkswagen Panel.
Volkswagen, das Auto.